Workers from major corporations, including Amazon, Whole Foods, Target, and Instacart, are walking out on the job today in order to protest the unsafe working conditions and the lack of hazard pay and fair pay, considering they are considered essential workers who are putting themselves out there in order to do their jobs. They're risking their lives, so they deserve the protection they're demanding. Now, one thing that we should also be aware of is while they're out there protesting and striking, behind the scenes, government is working the way that it has been working. You have corporate lobbyists doing everything and anything possible to clear these companies of any potential liability should their employees contract this virus on the job. Jonathan Larson at TYT Investigates wrote a very detailed piece about this, talked about how the U.S. Chamber of Commerce is part of this lobbying effort and how they're already having a great deal of influence on some lawmakers. According to his piece, corporate lobbyists, including former top aides to Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, have been quietly working to curtail the legal rights of Americans regarding coronavirus. Disclosure forms show that lobbyists for individual companies and the biggest corporate lobbyist in the country have been pursuing legislative and regulatory restrictions with Congress, the White House, and federal agencies. So there are two things that you should pay close attention to when it comes to this story. One is referred to as the False Claims Act, and that would essentially squash potential whistleblowers. The other is the private right of action issues, and that blocks people from taking on corporations in court. So this would clear these companies of any type of legal liability should their employees get sick or die from working during the pandemic. Among the lobbyists working on the CARES Act private right of action issues for the chamber, meaning the Chamber of Commerce, were G. Hunter Bates and Casey Higgins. Bates was McConnell's chief of staff. Higgins worked for the then Speaker, Paul Ryan. I bring that up because this is just the classic revolving door of politics. They already have nice, cozy relationships with these lawmakers. And then on top of that, of course, there are always campaign donations and the financial corruption that we talk about on a regular basis. And that, unfortunately, is going to persuade some of these lawmakers to push to protect these companies that are not providing, just the bare minimum to their employees: masks, gloves, social distancing, the guidelines that we've been told over and over again to keep people safe so they don't contract the virus. I have more, but John, I want you to jump in.
Yeah, well, think about what's going on right now, that this is a time when, like in the last crisis, huge amounts of money are being handed over to corporations. And rather than that money coming with new strings attached to make sure that it's used in the right way, in ways that are going to help out workers and all of that, it's being accompanied with new powers, new being unhampered by regulations. I mean, we especially see that with the meatpacking plants, that in addition to what's going to be coming, which is, as you're saying, they're going to be forced to bring their workers back in. The workers are definitely going to come back in, because if they don't, they're not only going to lose their job, they're going to lose access to unemployment as well. And now, if they get sick or injured on the job, they're going to be protected from any sort of lawsuits having to do with it. And then at the same time, we talked about, all of the different regulations on line speed and inspectors and all of that they're getting. So I'm glad that we're talking about this, because we need to make sure that to the extent that we can, we stop them from getting these new protections from lawsuits during coronavirus. But what I'm worried about is them coming out of this crisis newly insulated from lawsuits that don't explicitly have to do with the pandemic, that might involve injuries on the job or loss of life from other things. And if they're being told that you guys have to get going, you have to rev up the economy as much as possible, and the overarching signal that they're getting from the government is that you will be protected from the consequences of whatever happens, that's scary right now in the crisis. But I think it should be scary looking ahead too. Once we're out, what is the state? What is going to be the state of these companies? What is going to be the state of the oversight and regulations that can remain?
You make a great point. And what we've noticed in crises of the past is there are bad actors who use our moment of tragedy, our moment of crisis, to roll back regulations, to further insulate themselves from any real justice. And during the coronavirus, I mean, there have been a number of stories of the Trump administration deregulating entire sectors of our economy. Like, for instance, the EPA told massive corporations that they don't have to worry about any type of environmental oversight during the pandemic. That's a disaster. That means that they can pollute as much as they want, and they don't have to worry about the FDA coming after them. I'm sorry, the EPA, my apologies. They don't have to worry about the EPA coming after them. Also, there is a big story was covered by The Intercept about how William Barr, the Justice Department, wanted to hold suspects indefinitely without even charging them during the pandemic. So there are all these rights and all these regulations that we have in place that are being rolled back right now. And I worry that people aren't paying close enough attention. We already know about the types of civil liberties that were taken away from us because people bought into the fear mongering after 9/11 and thought, oh, we have to do this. We have to give up our rights in order to protect our national security. We now know that it was all a lie, and we shouldn't allow them to fearmonger, to scare us into, basically giving up our hard-earned rights. That's what's happening right now.
And by the way, I know that we're going to talk about the protests, the like Michigan and the anti-lockdown protests and things like that. And these are people that supposedly, if you believe the reason they say they're in the streets, it's that the pandemic isn't the problem, it's the loss of your rights during the pandemic. But which rights are they talking about? Are they talking about the corporations that are like sending all their lobbyists to DC right now to find out how they can be freed up to do whatever they want while being handed hundreds of billions or trillions of dollars overall? Is that the loss of rights and freedom that these people are protesting against? No, it's just that they can't go to like a baseball game for a couple of weeks. Like once again, they have been so scared that they're distracted by all this stuff that supposedly is super important, super high priority. And the people who have actual power right now, the swamp that they've been wanting to be drained for some time, it's all in DC, and they're getting what they want. And none of these protesters seem to know or care about it.
Exactly. You make such a good point. And I think part of the problem is this should be a huge story. I mean, this is what should be at the top of a rundown for every major news organization, because this actually has real consequences on people, on employees. And it's not really getting much coverage. So if you're watching this and you want it to get more coverage, you want this type of story to gain more traction so people are aware of the types of rights they're having taken away from them, then share this story. We'll include a link to Jonathan Larson's piece in the description box if you're watching this online. And, just share it, share this stream, share this video, share everything you can, because if you can't get the mainstream media to focus on stories like this, in the very least, we can kind of use our power to get this news out there, because people need legal recourse. People need the ability to hold their employer accountable if the employer has decided that they're going to save a few pennies and refuse to provide masks for their employees. It's out of control. And by the way, this lobbying is working. So I want to go to the last graphic here. McConnell said on Monday that any new relief must shield businesses or business owners from legal liability for their actions. And then President Trump has said he's planning to exempt companies from liability for their actions to facilitate them reopening. So you're right. Not only do they get bailed out, on top of that, they are basically they're not held accountable if they're not protecting their employees while they're on the front lines doing these jobs.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.